This is one of the stories you might find yourself having to hear 2 or 3 times in a row to make sure your ears aren't playing tricks on you. Bank robber takes 6 people hostage, orders them to strip to their underwear, then drives them to an airport where he's shot by police as he apparently tries to get away in a small plane. See what I mean? Makes you think the headline writers may be having a little fun with you, except it is all true. It played out yesterday in Kansas. CNN's Ed Lavendera reports on the bizarre case.
Wearing a T-shirt with the words, "Show me the money," Benny Herring walked into Capital Federal Savings fully armed and with a plan. Hostage Monica Carter says Herring was calm from the moment he walked through the front door, even when police surrounded the bank.
In my eyes, it looked like he knew the police were there the entire time, and he was taking his time.
There were 10 employees and 1 customer inside the bank. Investigators say Herring ordered everyone to undress, probably as a way to show he was in control, and then he tied them all together. That's when he noticed a minivan just outside the bank door.
He was in the bank chaining everyone together. He asked whose van that was, and I said that it was mine. He asked for my keys and told me to give them to one of my coworkers, and then he led them outside.
The scene outside was intensifying. SWAT teams and snipers surrounded the area. An armored vehicle rolled onto the scene to keep the masked gunman from getting away.
Possibly been the weirdest 24 hours of my life.
Shane Kaiser, a photographer with the Kansas City Star, arrived just in time to capture some of the most bizarre scenes of the foiled bank robbery. The suspect moving 6 half-naked hostages into the van.
It was part terror, part fear, and just not really knowing what in the world's going to happen next.
About 40 minutes after walking in, the alleged robber and his hostages were driving away with a squadron of police cars in pursuit. This made officers nervous.
Anytime you have a bank robbery or robbery of any type in a structure, we always want to try to confine them into that area because it's a lot easier to work that way. Anytime that somebody takes hostages and leaves into another area, we have a lot less control of what happens, and it's very dangerous for the hostages.
The van drove almost 2 miles down the road where officers were about to encounter the next surprise. Lieutenant Sean Reynolds was in the chase when he saw the van speed onto the runway of a small airport.
You immediately think, does this guy have a getaway plane?
That was exactly what went through my mind, is that there's a plane sitting on a runway and has 2 subjects inside of it, and the plane's running. And they drove immediately right to that area. That's exactly what I thought.
Inside the plane was Matt Miller, a veteran flight instructor, oblivious he and a student were finishing pre-flight tests and about to take off when the suspect holding a hostage approached the plane, and police quickly surrounded them as well.
The next thing I hear is, "Get out, get out." They're shouting for me to get out, and I raise up and look at the guy with the gun pointed at me, and I realize, oh, he wants me to get out.
At first, police thought Matt Miller was part of the getaway plan.
At that point, we didn't really know what was going on. We didn't know if the plane was part of some type of elaborate plan or what the deal was. So we had to treat them as, possible suspects as well.
Police say they weren't going to let the alleged robber, who was also a licensed pilot, fly away, so they shot him as he opened the plane's door. Miller and the flight student jumped out of the plane. Police then handcuffed the 2 men.
I said, "Hey, man, I'm the good guy here." And then it says something about I'm a flight instructor. And he said, "Well, flight instructors rob banks, too." And at that point, I went, "Bank robbery?" So dummy.
And that was the ending to what some here are describing as the most bizarre bank robbery this part of Kansas has ever seen. Ed Lavendera, CNN, Olathe, Kansas.
Joining us now live from Phoenix, Arizona, is Troy Evans, who advises banks on robbery prevention, which is a good position to do because he served 7.5 years on a bank robbery conviction some time ago. Troy, I appreciate you being here. You were convicted of 5 armed bank robberies. The FBI says about, 70% of all bank robbers get caught. Did you think you'd get away with it when you were robbing banks?
At the time that I was committing those crimes, I was in a drug-induced stupor and very much felt that I was invincible. And to be honest with you, it was either going to get enough money to feed my habit for another 30, 60 days, or the police were going to show up and I was going to make them do something that I didn't have the guts to do myself.
So you weren't even thinking really far ahead. You robbed banks, you wore a hat and sunglasses, you pretty much tried to blend in. This guy in Kansas goes in wearing a black hood, a shirt that says, "Show me the money." What does this tell you about the guy?
Well, it's definitely out of the norm. Having met and interviewed over 300 convicted bank robbers, most of them are either strung out on drugs, they've got a gambling habit to pay, they've got a house that's about to be foreclosed on. It's very much an act of desperation. This guy, I would say probably something in his personal life triggered him over the edge. I don't know, a divorce, losing a house, losing a job, the death of a loved one. That's only speculation, but something definitely had pushed him over the edge. But that's not the norm.
But you say it's an act of desperation for a lot of these guys. But this guy went in with chains, plastic handcuffs, walkie-talkies. He even gave a walkie-talkie to police so that he could communicate with them. Is that kind of planning typical?
You know, that's not typical. This guy, obviously, he was a licensed pilot. We can assume that he was pretty smart. I'm guessing that it was probably something that was planned out over some course of time. He just didn't pick this bank randomly. I would also guess, and again, this is just speculation, it's probably something, he may have had some issues with some banks in the past. For him to ask the individuals to undress and to chain together, that's very unusual. It's almost a humiliation type of thing, and it just makes me wonder if he doesn't have an issue with a bank or banks, maybe a foreclosure in his past, something like that.
Well, what's the biggest deterrent to a robber? I mean, you counsel banks now. What do you tell them?
Right. Number one, the first and foremost prevention weapon they have at their disposal is their employees. Their employees alone can keep a would-be robber from coming into their institution. They're on the front lines. They see the people every day that are coming in and out, and if they just are aware of suspicious activities, anything out of the ordinary, great customer service, somebody you don't recognize, walk up, extend a hand to them, and ask them what you can do for them today. Last thing a would-be robber wants is somebody looking them in the eye, and at the same time, for the legitimate customer, it's fantastic customer service. So the frontline people, very important.
Good advice there. Troy Evans, appreciate you joining us. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Anderson. My pleasure.
Here are a few fast facts now on the subject of bank robberies gleaned from the FBI. Friday is actually the biggest day for bank heists, and mornings between 9 and 11 are when they mostly happen, perhaps because it's payday. Somewhat surprisingly, better than half of all bank robberies do not involve the use of a firearm, and very, very few, less than 1%, lead to a homicide or hostage taking.